Welcome to the Kentucky Leadership Development and Discipleship Academy, where leaders are equipped, disciples are strengthened, and your calling is developed for kingdom impact.
Hello, we're here today to present a 1-hour CEC for the Church of God of Prophecy. I'm so blessed to be here. I am Frank Hall. I am pastor of the Burdine Church of God of Prophecy, and I'm so blessed that Brother Stetson has invited me to come and do a training session so we can get our credits in for our 20 hours of continuing education. Today I'm going to be talking about communicating with difficult behaviors. How many of us know that communication and effective communication is a soft skill? It is a skill that we need inside the church. It is a skill that we need outside of the church. I just want to let you know there's not going to be a lot of theology in this presentation, but what is going to happen is we're going to talk about how to more effectively communicate and how to deal with those difficult behaviors. Because we know as pastors and as ministers, we all have those people that we have to deal with who are upset. And anytime you're dealing with somebody who is upset, it is a different conversation skill than what we're used to. What is effective communication? Many times, communication breaks down because we say words that are not received the way that we intended. Have you ever said something and the minute that you said it, you realized, ooh, that probably could be taken a different way? So we should take, and it's okay when you're talking with somebody or when you're communicating, to pause. Every second does not have to have words in it to be an effective communicator. So think about our words. Think about what our words could mean to someone else. Effective communication uses language that is clear and free of ambiguity. When we're trying to communicate, we're trying to get a point across, so we want to make sure that the words that we use are appropriate for the audience that we are talking with. So obviously, if I'm communicating with my fellow pastors, my communication may be heavier in theology than when I'm dealing with somebody that's their first time in the church. So choose your words for your audience. And communication has to be clear, has to have a clear purpose or goal. Don't just randomly talk to be talking. Have a purpose, have a goal, have an intended end result from your communication. Communication is followed by empathy for the audience's feelings and perspectives. So when we speak, we have to understand that it's going to affect others. See, Proverbs 15:11 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." So if we keep our words soft, if we keep our words in the love of Christ, see, we can speak truth and still speak it in love. 4 principles of effective communication. Clarity is the foundation for effective communication. We want to be clear. What are we trying to say? How can we say that in the clearest means necessary? Also, effective communication seeks to be understood, not responded to. So if we're effectively speaking, we're trying to portray a message. And if we're trying to portray a message, we're not seeking responses. We're seeking understanding. Effective communication also considers the outside environment of the message. So where you're giving that message is different. Just like this class, it's very different. I've given this class in several different settings, and when I'm giving this class in a live audience, I teach this class different than I am here being videoed. So think about your audience, think about the message that you're trying to give, and the environment that is given in. Effective communication also anticipates questions and objections, and responds wisely. Before you ever go to give a presentation, or before you ever go to speak with that person who is that difficult behavior, anticipate what their complaint will be. We used to call that being the devil's advocate. When you're preparing your talk with them, be aware of what the pitfalls may be. Be aware of what their complaints will be. Know what perspective they're coming to you from, because whatever their perspective is becomes their reality. It doesn't have to be a real reality, but if it is their perspective, it becomes their reality. So if you can anticipate what their reality is, you can better anticipate what questions are going to come up to be more effective in your communication. Clarity. I talked about clarity was the foundation of effective communication. Effective communication is always a clear communication. If you're not clear, if you're not articulate, if you're not well versed on your subject, then it's going to be harder to communicate. My wife and my daughter are both in the medical field. I don't communicate well with them when they're talking work because I don't speak their language. However, I can speak Bible with anybody. I can speak environmental chemistry with anybody because I can articulate that. So part of effective communication is also knowing when you're not the right person to be talking with them. So be prepared to understand that you may not be the best person to answer their question. I have learned in my life, I have lost all sense of pride, and I'm very quick to say, here, let me get somebody else to answer that question for you, especially if I'm not the one qualified to answer it. Clarity happens when the message that you deliver is received as the message that you intended. How many times have you spoke to somebody and they left mad and you thought, well, I was just trying to encourage them? We have to be careful that the message that we're presenting and their perspectives line up in the way that we're presenting it. We want to make sure that you write it down. Understand the message is being delivered. Write it down, read it out loud, repeat as necessary. I don't know, when I first started preaching, I had a minister once to tell me these same 3 steps. To write it down, read it out loud, and repeat as necessary. And if you do those when you're planning on speaking, or when you, especially if you've got that member that tells you, Pastor, I need to talk with you. We've all had those conversations, right? And our first response, let's be real honest, our first response is, oh. Your body language shows it. Your own. And I joke all the time, the only time I'm ever called Bishop is when somebody has a problem. And when I answer the phone and the pastor on the other end addresses me as, hey, Bishop. It's like, oh. And I'm so glad I'm not there in person because I know my body language just showed, oh, this is going to be bad. Your body language sometimes speaks louder than the words that you're saying. So if you write it down, if you read it out loud, if you repeat it, you're less likely to let your body language speak louder than your words. All right. The next part is understanding. The foremost job as a communicator is to be understood. That's whether you're speaking to a congregation on Sunday morning, or whether you're speaking to an individual member, or whether you're talking to a potential new attendee. And how do you know that you present all those situations differently? Each situation is unique, and you want to be understood. One of the keys to effective communication is they tell you want to bait the hook. You want to bait the hook to suit the fish. And I know I've been around a lot of you. I know we've got a lot of outdoorsmen. We've got a lot a lot of fisher. See, I'm not much of a fisher because I ain't patient enough to sit there on the bank and wait for a fish. And ironically, I pastor the same way. I'm not patient enough to sit and wait on a fish to come in the door. I go knock on doors and look for fish. And I, in my community, we are a very impoverished community, and I speak to them from a place of growing up in an impoverished family. Why? Because I can relate to them. See, God has blessed me, and God has blessed our church, and God has blessed our church to outreach. And I bait the hook with our ministries that we have that directly meets the needs that they have. So I bait my hook. Now we've got some folks that we went and visited. Now, when I went and visited and realized that I was talking with the banker, I baited my hook different, because he wasn't as concerned with what our outreaches was. What he was more concerned with was what kind of worship, what kind of ministry that we had going internal. So my conversations with him, my bait changed. And it's okay to realize midway through a conversation that you need to change bait, because that's what you do on the riverbank, right? If you're fishing and you're not catching anything, you're going to change bait. But at the same moment, you also need to know when to cut bait and leave. So that we'll talk about that more as we go on. But also, you want to look for that aha moment. When you realize that you've got the right bait, you'll get an aha moment. Now, when you get that aha moment, that's when you set your hook, just like you do in fishing. You want to go all in on that conversation, because you realize that you're now on the same page. When we talk about the environment, we want to ask yourself these questions when delivering an important message. Am I using the right words here? Am I using the right words for this environment? Because the right words for this environment may be different than the right words in a different environment. I will speak much differently to a member one-on-one than I will from the pulpit. Now, does the message change? No, the message stays the same. But the words that I use and the approach that I use will vary. I also want to ask, am I saying these words in the right way and the right medium? So it ain't just about what words. Am I saying them in the right context? Am I talking with the right person at this situation? How many times do you talk, especially as pastors, you're talking to a husband about this problem that they're having and realizing he don't have a problem at all, that it's his wife. And she's really, really upset. No matter what you say to that husband, it ain't going to stop that wife from being upset, or vice versa. The wife will talk to you and the husband's really, really upset. Nothing you say to that wife's going to help her not be upset. Is the conversation happening in the right place? See, here's where a lot of times as pastors, I know I fall short. I'll just put it that way. Somebody comes to you after church, say, "Pastor, can I talk to you?" "Why, sure." And then you realize 5 minutes in, this is not a conversation that you should be having in the foyer. It's okay to change venues. Did you hear me? It's okay to change venues. Politely ask them, "Hey, this really, can we take this somewhere more private?" And if it's inappropriate for you to take them to the office, take them back up to the front. Take them in some place where they have somewhat of a security and somewhat of a separation. Also, is it the right time? Let me ask you, when that person comes up and they're so mad they can't see straight, is that the right time to talk to them? Probably not. Try scheduling a time. It's okay to say, "Hey, I've got this going on right now. Can we meet on this? Your concern is important to me." Don't blow them off, but schedule a time. Schedule a time that you can be a part. Schedule a time that you can be solely theirs. Effective communicators are always asking themselves these three questions. What questions will my audience have? Do you ever ask yourself in a sermon, when you finish your sermon notes, do you ever ask yourself, what questions are my congregation going to have when I finish this message? If you've got a long list of questions, your message may not have been as effective as you thought it was. See, and this is something that changed my entire viewpoint on developing a message. And I know you've got a lot of ministry. I have too. But let me tell you, I have learned in the last few years that approaches can change. Let me tell you, our approach, many times, our approach needs to change. The message still remains the same. We're still the message of Jesus Christ. It's still the message of the cross. It's still the message of the love of God and His eternal plan for us. But how we present that, the Bible says the power of life and death is in the tongue. My daddy used to say, you can be dead right, but still be dead. In your congregation, if you're ending your messages with more questions than you gave answers, your message may be dead in the water. What objections will I face? Have you ever preached a message that your congregation thought was controversial? Let me tell you, I've been teaching discipleship classes at my church the first Wednesday of each month, and we had one, and we teach on topic. And my church they'll ask questions at the end of a class, and we base the next discipleship class on what their questions is. And we taught a class, and we've got, and I'm sure I will get calls on this even from this video on how to understand Bible translations. Well, let me tell you, I had a lot of upset older members when I started talking about Bible translations. But I hate to tell you, the King James Bible isn't even the King James Bible. What we read is the third revision of the King James Bible. The 1611 King James Bible does not look anything like what we read today. So if you're based on translations, if you're trying to base on translations, the original Bible, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and Aramaic, and the New Testament was written in a little bit of Hebrew and mostly Greek. I don't know about any of you, but I don't read that. And I say that with somebody, and I'm in seminary, and I don't read that. So we don't want to get caught up on not being able to defend what we're talking about. Know which ones to entertain and which ones to let go. Do you know you don't have to answer every question right then? Some of the wisest answers that I've ever been given is, I don't know. You know what the problem with answering I don't know? It takes humility. It takes a lot of humility as a pastor to say, I don't know. You know what takes even more courage? To say, I'll find out. Because you know what you have to do when you say, I'll find out? You have to go ask somebody else. And you have to admit to somebody else you didn't know. See, and for us, that's hard. Hubris is a hard place to realize that you've got pride in your life, and I'm there. I'm in the same boat. I can like to consider myself a very educated pastor, but I still have to respond. I don't know. All right, the art of effective communication, do's and don'ts. I love this list, and I got a handy-dandy reference down here, and this handy-dandy reference will actually take you to a really good website on communication. And I'm going to go from one side to the other. The do's: clearly and concisely convey your message. Do not use vague or use jargon. How many of us realize in the church we use jargon? There are terms that we use that we assume, and one of the things why we started our discipleship class is I was preaching one Sunday and was talking about justification, and it looked like I had deer in the headlights in the congregation. we use the terms justification. We use the term sanctification. We use the term Pentecost. We use all these terms, but we don't define them for anybody. How many of us know we have a jargon in the church? See, I'm old enough, I can talk about victory leaders. I can talk about gleaners. Now, you talk about gleaners and people look at you like, what? See, we have a jargon. We have to understand that everybody doesn't know our jargon. So when we talk about justification, when we talk about appropriation, when we talk about the kinsman redeemer, when we talk about rapture, all those things, yes, they have meaning to us and they're wonderful parts of our faith. But at some point in time, that new member, you need to take time so they know what it means. If not, they're sitting there going, because you got loud and somebody else said amen, they're saying amen. Have you ever been guilty of saying amen to something that you really didn't know what they said? See, that's your time in this lesson to say amen or on me, because we've all done it. All right. Practice active listening is a do. The don't is don't interrupt and don't dominate the conversation. I've got a very dear friend that when I speak, I love them. But when I go to talk with them, 75% and I like to talk, and 75% of the conversation is them. So when I can't get in a word edgewise, it means that they're dominating too much of the conversation. But there used to be the phrase, I used to hear the phrase all the time, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth because you should listen twice as much as you speak. There's no good theology to that, but there is some good practice to that. One of the things that I like to do in a crowd when I walk into a crowd that I don't know is I'll come and I'll sit where I can see everybody, and I'll sit and listen and I'll watch. Within about 15 minutes, I can tell you who's your dominant personalities. I can tell you who's going to be instigating. I can tell you who wants to be in charge and who would rather be someplace else. Why? Because I listened. You can learn a lot by listening instead of talking. So if you've got somebody that's coming to you with a problem, let them speak their entire piece. Don't interrupt them in the middle to try to respond to something. Actively listen. Make notes in your mind of points you want to make. And then a part of active listening is once they're through speaking, speak back to them. This is what I understand that you're saying. Why is that important in active listening? Because you want to make sure that reiterates to them that, hey, they were listening to me. Give time to reply back what their concerns are. Because what you don't want to happen is what I'm hearing is this, this, and this. And like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. So, and sometimes when they're upset, they may not be clearly communicating. So it's important to relay back to know that we're talking about the same things. Tailor your message to your audience is the do. Your don't is don't forget to consider your audience's needs. See, when we're communicating, remember, we're communicating to be understood, not to be heard. We're communicating to meet a need, not to be responded to. So we've got to remember those things. Show empathy for others' viewpoints and don't be dismissive. We was just sitting around the table up here and talking about different religious viewpoints and different life choices. You can't be dismissive. Their lifestyle may be sin, but when you dismiss it as nothing, you've dismissed them as nothing. We've got to be empathetic. See, Christ loved the sinners. See, he didn't dismiss them. He listened to them. See, by the very nature of Christ and the very ministry of Christ, we should listen and have empathy towards their situation. We don't have to wink at sin, but man, we have to truly love that sinner. And if we truly love that sinner, to have empathy for them. Let me tell you, like I said, we deal with a lot of hurting families in our church, and man, in my life, I've come to the place, where I have a lot of empathy for hurting folks. I can go full circle in my life on empathy. I've had the joy of holding my beautiful child in my arms, and the pain of closing a casket lid. See, I can have empathy for your joy. I can have empathy for your pain. Why? Because I can relate. And as pastors and as ministers, we need to learn to relate to our people's needs. You do focus on positivity and solutions, but do not dwell on negativity and blame. Have you ever been in a church leader meeting and everybody was pointing and blaming? Those are really tough leadership meetings. Now, let me ask you, how many of those meetings were you the one blaming and pointing? If we're not careful as the leader, our leadership team looks at us to be the example. I like to use the example of a ball game. We like to teach our kids sportsmanship, right? How many of us as parents has ever yelled at an official from the stands? You've just canceled everything you've tried to teach your kid about sportsmanship because you didn't show sportsmanship. And the same thing is true in our church setting. When we're there, we got to focus on the positive. I always say, if you're looking at that sports narrative, cheer for your child. Be the loudest one there. I'm all for being the loudest one there, but do it in a positive way. We had some ministers for their first message ever this past Sunday. You know where I sit? I sit up on the front pew in the front corner, and I wanted to make sure that he knew that I supported him. When the message was over, the only thing when he asked me how was, I went through all the positive things that he done wrong. Did you catch that? I went through all the positive things of the stuff he did wrong. Oh, you did this so great. Now work on this. You did this so well in this. Now work on this. See, I didn't start with anything negative. I started with everything that was positive. Man, he had a powerful, powerful word from God. But his body language showed that he was terrified. But see, so I focused on the message and not the delivery. And so many times when we're communicating, it's so easy to dwell on the negative. De-escalating skills. This is sort of the crux of what I was wanting to talk about, but we can't get to how to deal with difficult behaviors until we start effectively communicating. So if we effectively communicate, if we work on the first half of this presentation, the last half of this presentation becomes much easier, okay? Because we don't find ourselves in as many situations to have to de-escalate. Soft skills are good. I don't care whether, and I know I'm sitting here with Stetson as a teacher. One of the things that they stress is soft skills in your teaching. Soft skills is something we need to develop no matter what we're doing in life. We need communication skills. De-escalation skills involve techniques for reducing tension and agitation in a person or situation by maintaining a calm demeanor, using active listening. So you're going to find a lot of the same things that we was just talking about. Using active listening and empathy to understand their feelings. Setting clear boundaries while offering respectful choices and solutions. And I find this last one is the part where we most time break down. When you've got that person who is upset, and let's be honest, we've all dealt with that person that is belligerent. There's no other way to describe it. They're mad for the sake of being mad. They don't even know why they're mad. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe me and Stetson's the only one. I don't know. But we've all dealt with that person. Nothing you say is going to change their mind. But when you offer boundaries, this is as far as I'm willing to go. When you offer respectful solutions, and one of the ones I love, well, what outcome would you like to see? And when they say, I don't know, see, it changes the whole conversation, because they really didn't have any kind of situation in mind. They were just wanting to, sometimes they're just wanting to be heard. Nonverbal communication plays a significant role in the ability to redirect the focus to problem solving. It helps shift people from emotional states to rational thought. When somebody comes up to you and the first thing you do is, you throw up your hands and you know, that's not going to help the situation. When they're talking to you about this problem that they've got in their family and you're on your phone, that's not going to help. When they're trying to talk to you and you're looking at everyone else but them, that's not going to help. So we've got to be careful with our body language. And one of the things that really is a nonverbal tick that just about every one of us has is this number right here. When somebody's talking to you and you stick your hands in your pocket and you slump, your body language is telling them you checked out. Whether you have or not, your body language says that you have. And that is one of the hardest habits that I ever had to break with my body language. You say, well, what do I do with my hands? There's many things that you can do with your hands other than stick them in your pockets. They used to teach you to do them just like this right here. But with concealed carry is what it is today, they tell you not to do that anymore because they can't see your hands. That becomes a place of distrust now. What they tell you now is to put your hands in front of you. Don't fold them. You know, for those of us that's got a nice shelf here, you can lay them on your shelf. Or you can hold them here in front of you. Or if you're like me, you can talk with your hands. It's okay to talk with your hands, because when you talk with your hands, it gives you something to do with them. But body language is important. So that open body, that I already jumped into my next point. That's what it means by having an open body. You want your body to be open and inviting. Respect personal space. It plays a significant role in the ability to redirect and focus to problem solving. It helps shift people from emotional states to rational thought. If somebody is upset, do not step towards them. Period. Ever. One, you're probably going to get hit. In church, maybe not, but on the sidewalk, probably. If you're witnessing to somebody and they're agitated and you step towards them, you're probably not going to like the results, because what they just saw you as is an aggressor. And I've actually seen in church almost come to blows over arguing. Listen, they were arguing over doctrine, and the one stepped towards the other, and we had to step between them. Why? Because he saw him as stepping towards him being aggressive. Maintain your focus. Plus, as a minister, look, everybody, remember I was talking about perspective? If you step towards them, everybody in your congregation is going to think you as the aggressor. But if you stay still and let them come to you, they see you as being passive and loving. I promise you that's what they're going to see. And then you allow the problem to come to you. You open and you present. All right. Maintain calmness. Control your own emotions. Project calm, confident demeanor to avoid escalating the situation. I cannot control how upset someone else is. What I can control is how I react to it. Just because you yell at me does not mean I have to yell back. Active listening. I know active listening and empathy, we hear a lot in this. If there's two keys That is the two most effective keys in de-escalation. It is active listening and empathy. I cannot overstress active listening. Focus on understanding their concerns, their frustration without judgment. Use techniques like nodding, reflective comments, things that show that you understand where they're coming from. Show genuine concern and try to see the situation from their perspective. Even, listen, here's the hard part. Even if you don't agree with them, try to understand where they're coming from. You know, we used to talk about walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. You know, they could be wrong, but they're so focused on their hurting. Let me tell you, hurting people hurt people. That's just how it is. You know, and when they act out of a place of hurt, we can't respond with more hurt. Non-threatening body language, like I said, keep that open posture, make eye contact, give the person ample space to feel secure. Use a calm tone. Speak slowly in a quiet, modulated voice rather than raising your voice or becoming defensive. See, this is really hard for me. I'm loud. See, just like the teaching, I'm not yelling. This is my natural voice. This is how I talk. Growing up, my kids used to complain, "Dad, you're yelling at me." Oh no, if I was yelling at you, you'd know it. When my kids got to be adults, they understood when I was yelling at them. So, you know, but I have to very consciously, when I'm dealing with somebody upset, changing my posture, changing my voice. See, I can sound really calm. I can sound like what you want to hear. This is not my normal state of conversation. But when I come to this point, see, when you hear me talk like this, most people that know me know, "Oh, that's not him." But when I'm dealing with somebody that's upset, this is much more calming than the way I normally talk. And that is a skill that I had to learn and to practice. And how did I learn and practice it? Let me tell you, I coached for 15 years, and it became ingrained into me, especially when I coach boys. I started coaching boys, and then I went to coaching girls. How many of you know things that you can say while coaching a boy? You can say the exact same thing to a girl, and they're done. See, I could holler at my son playing baseball, "Hey, you got to get down!" And he doesn't think nothing of it. Coaching my daughter still at third base, just like my son. I told her, "You got to get down on the balls." She started crying. "You're yelling at me." No, really, I'm not. So I learned to change my tone. And sometimes we don't even realize we're sounding threatening. Set clear boundaries. Clearly and firmly communicate any limits or rules that must be followed, but do so respectfully. When they walk up on you, listen, one of the best, and I've officiated for years now. And one of the most effective things to do to a coach when they come charging at you is take a step back and go, "Coach, that's really far enough. Let's have some boundaries." See, and now if he comes forward, I'm not escalating the situation. He is. In the views of everyone around him, I'm no longer the aggressor. He is. So set boundaries. And then if he takes a step forward, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take another step backwards. "Now, coach. Now, brother. You know, that's not. You know, let's create some personal space. Let's not escalate this." All right. Offer choices. Provide simple, reasonable choices and options to give a person a sense of control and move them towards resolution. See, notice these are very vague. Why? Because I don't know what your situation is. And we can and let me tell you, these skills work regardless of whether you're arguing over doctrine or the fact that your wife is upset that you didn't take out the garbage. Well, what do you? Well, I expect you to take out the garbage once a day. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Focus on problem solving. Once the person has calmed down and expressed their feelings, work to shift the focus towards resolving the underlying issue. Usually when your wife is upset, she's arguing you didn't take the garbage out, the underlying issue isn't the garbage. 9 times out of 10, it's because your wife doesn't feel appreciated. That's a good point for a pause and to move forward before I get in trouble with my wife when she watches it. Be mindful of the environment. If possible, move people away from the source of problems and to change the setting to help de-escalate the situation. The use of silence. Allow moments of silence to give the person time to think and reflect, which can be a powerful communication tool. How many of us realize that when you're communicating with somebody or when you're talking to somebody, there does not have to be words filling every moment of that conversation? Sometimes a moment of silence speaks volumes. And this last one is my favorite point. When all else fails, remove yourself from the situation. And we're going to talk about when to know when to walk away. Knowing when to walk away. If your physical safety is threatened, if they're showing signs of violence, walk away. Walk away. See, and I'm a fairly big guy, and I've had martial arts, and typically speaking, if I'm out in public, I'm actually packing a gun. So me having to walk away, I don't have to walk away. I choose to walk away. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Why? Because I don't have to win. And if I'm the aggressor, what does that show to me as a pastor? Am I showing the love of Christ if I'm being the aggressor? If the conversation's going in circles, if you keep going around the coffee cup and can't find the handle, it's time to end the conversation. It's just plain and simple. And when your emotions are escalating, when you feel like you're the one starting to get upset, it's time to walk away. Because if you're upset, you're not going to do anything to help them. The other person's not rational. When that person starts talking just nonsense, that's usually going to lead to violence. It's time to walk away. When the personal attacks begin, when they make it personal, well, you're just stupid. It's time to walk away. You don't have to take it personal. Politely, look, this conversation's not going anywhere. We're going in circles. Walk away. Here's the one I love. When you realize that your goal has become to win instead of to resolve the situation. If you're still in discussions with them because you want to win the conversation, it's time to end the conversation. How to disengage gracefully. See, it's one thing to disengage, but it's another to disengage gracefully. Give a clear exit statement. You can say, I think we should take a break from this discussion for now. Let's come back to it when we've had a chance to calm down. And then walk away. Offer to return later. This leaves the door open for more productive conversation at a later time. But if you open the door to discuss it later, make an appointment and follow through. Don't avoid them. It makes it worse. Exit calmly and with a purpose. Physically move away from the situation without appearing to flee in fear. If the person follows, maintain distance and continue to assert your need for a break. I've got a couple of a nice, these were pamphlets that I've thrown in here because I really like them. and they're really quick reference guides. And I know these slides are going to be, this presentation is going to be available online. We're going to go over these same things, the 5 purposeful actions to remain calm, change your settings, respect personal space, listen, have empathy. See, those are things we've been talking about since slide 1, right? Body language. Body language is half of your communication. If your words are saying one thing and your body is saying something else, they're going to listen to your body and not your words. Keep a relaxed and alert stance. Keep your hands down and open. Keep them visible at all times. Use slow but deliberate motions. Don't be frantic. Maintain a neutral and attentive facial expression. When they say something that you think is the dumbest thing you ever heard, don't let your face react before your brain. And let me tell you, we've all done it. When they say something and you cock that head, you look at them, sort of side-eyed, or you sort of open your mouth in the, oh my goodness, did he really say that response? They see that before they ever hear what you said back. All right? I always said that the filter between my brain and my face sometimes gets broken, and I have to really focus on that. The bad body language. Don't stand rigid. Don't be directly in front of them. Don't stand nose to nose with them. If they come directly at you, one of the things they teach in this de-escalation setting is when they come at you, let them come where they're going to stand, and then you sort of take a half step backwards. I'm still facing them, but my body is not squared against them, and it helps de-escalate a situation. Don't ever point your finger. If you really want to see somebody get upset, point at them while they're mad. Excessive gesturing or pacing. When you're talking with them and man, you're just pacing back and forth in your spot, they're going to see that you're agitated and you don't want to be there. And the worst thing you could ever do is fake a smile. And my wife ain't here, but I use this example all the time. When my wife was in most of you all know my wife. She's the sweetest lady I've ever met. I would have never, ever thought she had ever harmed a soul in her life. But when she was in high school, she had a bully that smiled at her on the school bus. And she smacked the taste out of her mouth. And my wife, to this day, when you bring it up, she still gets irritated and goes, it wasn't a nice smile. And when I say that, I'm going to have people say, oh, she didn't do that. But see, we get into those situations, and that smile, sometimes that smile is worse than a blank expression. All right? So these keys to verbal communication: keep your tone, keep it, demonstrate empathy, your volume. Try to keep that volume down. Slow your speech down, because when you talk fast, you're gonna create friction. Also, inflection. Be aware that emphasizing certain words or syllables can be negatively impact your communication. So be careful where you emphasize your words. All right. Instead of, I love these. Instead of saying calm down. Have you ever said calm down to anybody and they actually calm down? Ever? Instead of saying calm down, try, I can see that you're upset. Instead of saying, I can't help you, try, I want to help. What can I do to help? Here is one that when I was going through the loss of my son, this is a comment when you're dealing with somebody who is hurting. I know how you feel. Let me tell you, nobody knows how somebody else feels. And I can tell you from experience, it comes across as the most condescending comment, even when given with good intentions. As men and women of God, we should remove "I know how you feel" from our vocabulary, because we don't know how they feel. We might understand how they feel. We may have empathy for how they feel, but everybody feels different. And it's okay. Say, I understand that you feel this way. Having understanding and knowing is two different things, because you're going to argue, well, you don't know what I'm going through. I love this one. Come with me. Have you ever been in that discussion in the foyer? You say, well, just come with me. Instead of saying, "Come, may I speak with you over here? Can we move this conversation?" All right, and I think I've covered my time, but I want to give my contact information. Once again, I am Pastor Frank Hall. My email is franklinchalljr@gmail.com. If you would like more information on this, I've got tons and tons and tons of information on effective communication and de-escalation. It was a large part of what I did and a large part of what I studied in my former life before being a pastor. And we thank you all, and I pray that this helps somebody. I realize that it was not spiritual in nature, but how many of us know that we need soft skills? We need effective communication in the church and in the body of Christ. We thank you, and God bless.
Thank you for being a part of the Kentucky Leadership Development and Discipleship Academy. Check out our other trainings, tools, and resources in the Academy to continue strengthening your leadership.